everybody, and in today's video we have a maximal invasion in the form of the newly released Transformers Netflix War for Cybertron trilogy, Battlefield Optimus Primal, and Rattrap 2-pack. Yes, I have indeed managed to obtain the final two Voyagers to be released as part of the third wave of Netflix figures, and much like many of you, this is probably the least anticipated and most underwhelming pack out of them all, as Optimus Primal and Rattrap are relatively new figures and their colour variation really isn't all that dissimilar to their previously released counterparts. Of course, much like we've seen from Cheetor, it does appear as if though these Netflix figures are more akin to how the Beast Wars characters did appear in the original 90s series, and whilst they do look really awesome, I'm not entirely convinced that many collectors are indeed actually going to be double dipping these two particular molds, but nevertheless we shall show an in-depth comparison between these new Netflix figures and of course their previously released counterparts, and please feel free to let me know down in the comment section below on whether or not Optimus Primal and Rattrap are figures that you shall be in fact adding to your collection. Starting off firstly by taking a look here at the packaging. Of course it is very standard for these Netflix figures. Something which I am noticing is that there is no plastic clamshell on these Voyagers, and Optimus Primal has never looked smaller. Honestly, there is just so much room here in this cardboard prison. It really does make me wish that maybe they could have added perhaps another core class figure into the mix, but nevertheless you can see Optimus Primal and Rattrap War for Cybertron trilogy, an amazing piece of artwork there of Primal transformed up into the ape mode with the maximal insignia slapped on the side. As we spin around here to the back, we've got Rattrap and Primal, maximal Optimus Primal, and of course here we've got the new black and red motif for the Kingdom artwork. And something which I didn't actually notice on some of the Kingdom figures is that Shockwave is in fact a part of this artwork. So is this a spoiler that he did not die in Transformers Earthrise? I guess we'll just have to wait and see until Kingdom does debut on Netflix in July. And of course we've just got the Transformers More Than Meets the Eye logo there at the top. So without further ado, let's crack these open so I can give you guys a full comparison and review of these figures. So here we have Battlefield Optimus Primal and Rattrap, and well, that's just prime. Surprisingly, I actually do prefer the colour variation on these two figures than when compared to Wave 1, especially where that Optimus Primal is concerned. Now that's not me giving Hasbro a free pass by any stretch of the imagination. I do still think that in some regards this set is a little lazy and could have had so much potential. I would have loved to have gotten the mouthguard look for Optimus Primal, and it would have been awesome if they could have included some blast effects or maybe even Rattrap's grenades. But for those of you who are looking for more Beast Wars accurate decos, I really do think that this set here for the most part is quite successful. Ultimately it will be down to your own personal preference as to whether or not you prefer the darker, more muted colour scheme that we get here with the Netflix version than compared to the brighter colour scheme that we got from Kingdom Wave 1. I actually do think as well that it is rather crafty to re-release what is potentially the better interpretations of the characters only a few months after their initial release. We saw it with Netflix Cheetor. His colour variation was really massively different when compared to what we got with Wave 1, so I do think that in some regards Hasbro need to be a little more careful with these repaints, perhaps even if they just prolonged the release, as it can leave some fans being rather infuriated and of course angry. But nevertheless, taking a look here at Optimus Primal, I absolutely love the metallic blue plastic that we have got here for the head. The overall colour scheme just looks so much better to me. I love the darker, more saturated colours to the fur texture, as well as the darker metallic blue that we get there for the guns, as well as the handles here for the swords, and even for the actual barrels of the blasters here on the forearms. You can see that we do also have an almost off-white colour scheme used there for the mouth, and the same can also be said here for the thighs. Now this is much more akin to the Masterpiece figure as well as his actual CGI design from the 90s show, and I'm all for it. I also much prefer the colour variation that we get here for the chest unit. You can see we have this really nice looking blue, as well as the three awesomely painted red sections there, which really do help to pop and break up the sculpt. As we take a look here towards the blasters on the shoulders, you can see these two have been sculpted really well, and we also do have that off-white colour scheme used here for the bicep, with the very nice vibrant almost metallic red picking out some of the sharper details of the sculpt. We still do have the lower region here, which reminds me of Sid from Ice Age, although unlike the original Kingdom version, this is more gunmetal than as opposed to the bright silver, which once again I much prefer. Turning our attention here down to the thighs, you can see that darker colour scheme used for the white, as well as the metallic blue used for the actual hip joint, and we also do in fact have silver toes than as opposed to the blue toes that we got on the Wave 1 Kingdom release. You can also see here that this hydraulic has been cast in that very nice looking blue with the red paint apps, and overall I just really love what Hasbro have done with this figure. We also do have the swords here, which I once again do prefer. We've got the metallic blue here for the handle, which has got some super nice looking sculpt work, as well as the gunmetal used here for the blades. Of course he can hold them, and we also do have some additional paint apps such as the black actually painted here on the top section of the hand, something which was missing on the Kingdom version, and this here once again is more akin to his CGI design as well as what we got with the Masterpiece figure. Articulation is exactly the same, so I shan't bore you all on that, but as we just take a look here towards the back, you can see that superb fur texturing detail, and something which I must mention in regards to articulation, I guess, would be that some of the joints do feel a little looser. Now, in some regards, that is actually a positive, especially here for this chest unit. On my Wave 1 version, it took a significant amount of force to actually rotate this around, but for the biceps, I am noticing that they are significantly looser, so that is definitely something to watch out. I also would have liked to have seen perhaps them find a way to give Optimus Primal his jetpack. Maybe if they could have retooled these to actually turn around to the back so that we could have had them facing down, that would have been nice, but nevertheless, it still is a really nice looking figure, and you can see there's some nice gunmetal used for the ears, so definitely awesome looking Optimus Primal figure. As we take a look here at Rattrap, I still do actually really like the colour variation, but I don't think that it is as spot on as Primal to how he appeared in Beast Wars. They have gone for this almost gunmetal grey for the fur, and I do actually think the original Wave 1 version is a little better, but nevertheless, you can see here that for this almost brain module that we get here, this has been completely picked out in a rather nice looking gunmetal grey. The head sculpt there has been really nicely picked out, and we've got some red paint and some silver there for the teeth. Maximal insignias here on the forearms as well as gunmetal grey, and you can just see the slightly more saturated colour motif that the entire figure has been cast in. The same can also be said here for the orange and the blaster, and much like Primal, the articulation is exactly the same, so I shan't go into detail all that much regarding that. As we bring in some of the Wave 1 figures, you can see here is Wave 1 Primal. Now, ultimately, it shall be up to your own personal preference on what figure you do prefer. To me, I just think the Netflix version wins hands down. As far as accuracy to Beast Wars is concerned, it is just so much closer, especially with the actual colorization here for the thighs and, of course, the mouthguard and the white there on the bicep. We, of course, now have the grey toes than as opposed to the blue, and just comparing the actual blades, you can see here, they to me just look so much better. This one looks a little cheaper in comparison, whereas this one definitely does feel a little more premium, but ultimately it will be up to your own personal preference. And here for the Rattrap comparison, we've got the Netflix version and of course the Wave 1 version, which, as mentioned earlier on, I do actually prefer the grey that they used here for the Wave 1 release, but I do actually quite like the gunmetal grey that we get there for the blaster than compared to the lighter grey that we get here. So there are good and bad points for both of these figures. As with all of these Netflix figures, ultimately it will just be up to personal preference, but super nice looking figures. And bringing the Netflix Cheetor here in for a comparison, it really does raise the question as to whether or not Hasbro are just going to go ahead and pretty much re-release all of these characters in more toon accurate decos. I really love how these three look, but I don't really want to be double dipping on figures that I have recently just purchased, so I do think that repaints are eventually going to burn collectors out, and in the end are going to burn Hasbro, as they're more than likely going to shelf warm, especially if they are charging a premium on these Netflix figures, which definitely does appear to be a running trend. I do think that all of these are a little more expensive than how they would be if individually purchased in the actual Kingdom line, but nevertheless they all do look really nice. So getting down to transformation, as I have already previously shown that in my individual reviews for these guys, I shall very quickly skim over it. Optimus Primal, maximize. Rattrap, maximize. So here we have both versions of Primal and Rattrap fully transformed up, or should I say maximized into their beast forms, and I'm pretty certain that many of you will be able to tell straight away of which figures are my favourite. And yes, Netflix Primal and the Wave 1 Rattrap. I do indeed actually prefer Wave 1 Rattrap's colour scheme when compared to the Netflix counterpart, as I just think this version looks a lot better in the lighter grey. There's just something about the darker colour scheme that doesn't sit all that right with me, and if anything, in some areas you can see that it is actually slightly purple. There is definitely a little bit of a purple motif to this. I just think the colour variation on this isn't the best, and it just doesn't blend in with this overall animal aesthetic. It looks a little unnatural, and I do just think that the colorization on this figure is better. Now, something which is actually worth noting is that unlike some of the initial promo images, this Netflix Rattrap does not have nowhere near as much of a white nose when compared to some of the promo images. It is definitely a lot more subtle and is better than those product shots. You can see we have got some nice details details such as the paint there in the ears, and the eyes too have also been painted rather nice, and it's a really, really nice looking figure, especially for what is a Legends class figure, but I just am not a big fan of the colour scheme on this Netflix version, and probably will keep this version in my main display. Now, taking a look here at Primal, the main difference here is the darker colour variation that we get here for the chest as well as the face. You may also be able to tell that, as mentioned in robot mode, we do have these sections painted than as opposed to the just plain grey that we got on the Kingdom version. Now, this once again is more akin to his Beast Wars appearance and of course the MP toy, and I just think that the colour variation for the chest looks so much better. We actually do have two different tones, so a lighter grey as well as a darker grey, and I just think it works so much better, especially for the actual face sculpt. And the colour that they've used for the fur is certainly a lot darker and is pretty much black than in comparison to the very dark grey that we got here for the Kingdom release. You can also see that we have a darker colour scheme here used for the gorilla or ape toes, and as we spin around here to the side, you can once again see the differences there. I do actually believe these backpacks are mistransformed, so please do excuse me. They are supposed to be situated down like this. You can see here that it is simply just a darker colour scheme here on the Netflix release, and overall I just think this version is a lot better. Maybe I'll keep this version here in ape mode and then this Netflix version of course in robot mode. Please feel free to let me know down in the comment section below on what you guys think to be the better out of the two. Once again, it's always going to come down to personal preference, but I would really be intrigued to know what the majority of you all think. Will you be picking up the Netflix version or sticking with the Kingdom version? And when it comes to Rattrap, do you agree with my thoughts in saying that the Wave 1 core class is a better colour than compared to the actual Netflix release? So that was my review on the Netflix Battlefield Optimus Primal and Rattrap 2-pack. Once again, much like all of these Netflix figures, I really do think that this is only going to be for those who are completionists or for those who missed out on the first wave of Optimus Primal and Rattrap. This pack is a really great new way of getting two of the most popular characters from the Beast Wars series, and in regards to Primal, the better colour scheme, at least in my opinion. Of course, I will have a comparison review coming up very shortly for the Sparkler Seeker, which is definitely a really, really nice addition into the Netflix line, so please be sure to smash that subscribe button so that you can be notified as soon as that review goes out. I really hope that you enjoyed this review, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.